Video, we'll be going over IRS Schedule 3, Additional Credits and Payments. Taxpayers would use this schedule if you have non-refundable credits other than the child tax credit or the credit for other dependents that are reported directly on your tax return on Form 1040, or if you have other payments that you made as well as refundable tax credits. So this schedule is broken down into two parts. Part one is non-refundable tax credits. Part two consists of tax payments and other refundable credits. So the difference is primarily that the difference between non-refundable credits and refundable credits. A non-refundable tax credit can reduce your tax bill dollar for dollar, but it cannot reduce your tax bill below zero. So if you had a total income tax of $10,000 and you had a total amount of non-refundable credits that in the order of $19,000, you would be able to take your $10,000 down to zero, but not negative. Whereas refundable tax credits are considered like a tax payment. You can get a refund just like you would get a refund if you made more payments than what your tax bill is. And they're reported, these two parts, part one and part two, are reported on different lines of your Form 1040 to reflect that situation. So I'll flip over to the Form 1040 real quick just to give you an overview. So your tax and credits calculation, this is the amount that your Schedule 3 would go into. These are non-refundable tax credits. Again, this reduces your tax bill to zero, but not below zero. And then, so again, this is how that would work. If your total tax was $10,000, then you would, let's just imagine that you have no tax credit up here. You would add 19,000 to the zero, and then you would subtract this from line 18, and you can't go negative here, so it would just be a zero. Conversely, these are all, like the refundable credits, are in the category of payments. So whether it's taxes that were withheld, estimated tax payments, these are all refundable tax credits that are reported directly on your tax return. So additional child tax credit, the American Opportunity Credit, those are reported directly on the tax return, and then this amount from line 15 of your Schedule 3. So even if your tax bill was zero up here, let's just imagine zero tax bill up here and you had no other credits, you would have $9,000 here of total payments. And then down here, you would determine the line 33 is more than your tax here. You would get a $9,000 refund, and then you can decide how it's refunded to you. So that's how that works. The difference between non-refundable credits that reduce your tax bill down to zero but not negative, and then refundable tax credits, which are considered the same thing as a tax payment. So this could be $9,000 of a refundable credit. It could be $9,000 of taxes withheld on your Form W-2. It all flows into the same total amount down here. So let's take a closer look at each of these line items. The intent of this schedule, because this schedule has so many forms that have offline calculations that feed into it, the purpose of this video is not necessarily to go into too much depth on any one form. We're simply going to talk about each line item, discuss the form where you can, that would apply to your tax situation. And then, we'll kind of walk through how the calculations work for your benefit. Every line item is $1,000. So just so that we can avoid confusion on the calculations and focus our attention really on each line item of tax credit and where you can find that. So all of the links that are mentioned here all the forms that are mentioned here will attach links to both articles and videos that we've created in the show notes. If you need to dig further down into like the foreign tax credit, we'll attach resources for IRS Form 1116. So without further ado, let's get into part one. So in line one, if you're familiar with the foreign tax credit, then you would do your calculations on IRS Form 1116. You don't necessarily have to complete Form 1116 if certain circumstances apply. We do go into a little bit more depth on each line item in the article. So if you have further questions, you can refer to the article and then to the requisite video. So, but in this case, we would attach IRS Form 1116 to this, and then we would enter that amount here. For line 2, this is the credit for child and dependent care expenses. So if you have a job or if you were actively looking for a job, this would be the credit that you paid for a qualified caregiver for those child care expenses. And you calculate that on IRS Form 2441. Line 3, education credits from IRS Form 8863. So education credits are mostly non-refundable. The lifetime learning credit is completely non-refundable. There is a portion of the American Opportunity Tax Credit, again, that is a refundable tax credit, and I believe that's right here, the line 8 amount, the refundable portion of the American Opportunity Credit. So that's the line 8 item. This happens to be line 19. So, if you incurred qualified education expenses, you can take a tax credit. The non-refundable portion of that credit cannot reduce your tax bill below 0. Retirement savings contribution credit. These are it's also known as the saver's credit. Generally speaking, you have to have a relatively low adjusted gross income. For example, a married couple filing jointly would not be eligible if the amount on their Form 1040 line 11, which is your adjusted gross income right here, if that's more than $76,500 for a married couple filing jointly, then you can't take the retirement savings contributions credit. But if you're eligible, that's on IRS Form 8880. Line 5A and 5B. In prior years, this was reported in different parts of this, but the IRS has done a pretty decent job of clarifying that there are two residential energy credits that are reportable on IRS Form 5695. So the first one is the residential clean energy credit. That's on line 15. And then the energy efficient home improvement credit, which is on line 32. Same form, IRS Form 5695. Line 6 contains a series of other, maybe lesser known, lesser taken, non-refundable credits. So line 6A is for the general business credit. It usually applies to individuals that are partners or shareholders in an S corporation, if you're self-employed or if you have rental property. So you would complete IRS Form 3800 and then enter that amount here. Now, if you made what's known as a net elective payment election amount, known as an EPE, this is a relatively recent development on IRS Form 3800, that would go in line 13C. So there are a couple of possible places where you would report certain credits from IRS Form 3800. Just pay particular attention to that because the net elective payment election is a payment, not a credit. So you would actually want to report that down here to possibly generate a refund if applicable. Credit for prior year minimum tax, that's calculated on IRS Form 8801. That would go into line 6B. For adoptive parents who may be eligible for an adoption credit, if you paid expenses to adopt a child, if you adopted a child with special needs, and if that adoption became final in the tax year, then you can file IRS Form 8839. If you would be filing this form anyway if you received employer-provided adoption benefits. Same form, two different things. One is the tax credit if you went out of pocket. The other one would be claiming an exemption from income under certain circumstances if your employer paid certain adoption-related expenses and then reported it to you on your W-2. In line 6D, this is the credit for the elderly or disabled. Schedule R is the schedule that's used. I don't see this too often, but it is a schedule that can be used to calculate a tax credit, and that tax credit would go into line 6D. The clean vehicle credit, a lot of people might have been familiar with the qualified electric plug-in vehicle credit. Just understand that there are two places that you would attach numbers from IRS Form 8936. So the line in 6F is for the clean vehicle credit for a new vehicle. If you are taking a credit for previously owned clean vehicle that meets the same criteria, then that would go into line 6M. So again, with IRS Form 8936, be careful which credit you're claiming in which order. In this case, this doesn't matter nearly as much as the Form 3800 credit, and making sure that that's right, because all of these figures get totaled up, but that's the technically correct approach. Mortgage interest credit, line 6G. So if you received a mortgage credit certificate from either a state or a local government, then you would be able to deduct the mortgage interest related to that credit, and that would be on IRS Form 8396. The District of Columbia first-time homebuyer credit basically exists now only as a carryover. So if you had a credit carry forward from 2023 tax year, you would put that here. But this probably does not apply to a lot of people since the last year for eligibility was 2011. So you would attach that. You would attach the IRS Form 8859 here, enter the amount of the homebuyer credit. And again, unless it's carried forward to another year. The IRS Form 8834, that's the qualified electric vehicle credit, and that would go on line 6I. So you can't claim this credit for a vehicle placed into service after 2006. You would only claim it if you have a electric vehicle passive activity credit carried forward. But you would calculate that on IRS Form 8834 and enter that amount here. Line 6J, alternative fuel vehicle refueling property credit. So if you installed like a solar powered charging station in your house, you can take a tax credit for it. You would complete IRS Form 8911 and then enter the credit here. Credit to holders of tax credit bonds. So if you're eligible, you would complete IRS Form 8912, enter the amount here. IRS Form 8978, if you're not a partner in a company, then this really wouldn't apply to you. But basically, this is an adjustment relating to any audit liabilities under the tax code. So you would complete a worksheet, which we'll put a link to. There's a video that you can watch if you need to calculate that worksheet. We'll put a link to that video in the show notes. And then the line 14 amount is the amount of credit that you would be claiming for that adjustment. Line 6M, that's the previously owned clean vehicles credit. Other non-refundable credits. So if there are any non-refundable credits that aren't reported elsewhere on your tax return, you would enter them here. You would list the type of credit and how much it was. So the instructions don't give any specific examples. So I just put $1,000, but you would have to come up with whatever that credit is under the tax code and then how much that credit is worth. So from here, we are going to total all the credits in lines 6A through 6Z. I believe that's $13,000. And then we're going to add that to the dollar amounts up here. That's another $6,000. So $19,000 in non-refundable tax credits. And then that would go, like I previously mentioned, in line 20 of your Form 1040. Again, it's on page 2. It's under the tax and credits section. The part 2 of Schedule 3, we're going to put it into the payments section. So tax and credits, all of these reduce your taxes down to 0, but not below. And then all of the payments, consider any of the refundable credits as if it's a payment in itself. So in part 2, we've got in line 9, the net premium tax credit. This helps people pay for health insurance purchased through the healthcare marketplace or Obamacare. So you might be eligible for the credit if you enrolled through the marketplace and have certain taxable, certain income thresholds based on where you live. So that amount would be reported to you, or you should receive a Form 1098A or 1095-A from the marketplace about your coverage. If you received an advance premium tax credit, then you would attach your IRS Form 8962. If you received an advance payment, then you may need to reconcile that and report any overpayments on Schedule 2 as a tax. So basically, if you're eligible for premium tax credit, let's say $300 a month, that would be $3,600 a year. So you received an advance of that. Let's say you received all $3,600, but for some reason, at the end of the year, maybe you disenrolled from the healthcare marketplace because you got a job mid-year. So you're still sitting on that $3,600, but you're only eligible for the credit on the first 6 months. You would have to go through the calculations to determine that you owe the remaining $1,800, and that would be charged back to you as an additional tax on Schedule 2. In line 10, let's imagine that you filed a tax extension, so either IRS Form 4868 or IRS Form 2350. So those are both extensions to file based on whether you're stateside or overseas. You would file the extension, and then you paid that amount. So that goes here under the other payments portion. If you had excess Social Security or what's known as Tier 1 RRTA tax, that's for railroad workers, basically the equivalent to Social Security. If you overpaid your Social Security taxes based on the wage base, which in 2024 was $168,600 per individual, you should be able to request that your employer adjusts the tax for you. However, if you do not get that, if the employer is not on board with that, then you can file a refund using IRS Form 843. You would attach it to your tax return, and then you would enter that amount here. So you can't claim an excess Tier 2 RRTA tax on your tax return. You would need to use Form 843 directly. Line 12, a credit for federal tax paid on fuels. So if you need to, you can attach IRS Form 4136. The rest of these are relatively lesser known tax credits. So if you had to complete IRS Form 2439, you would enter that amount here. Section 1341, credit for repayments of amounts included in income from earlier years. Basically, you paid a tax in an earlier year because it looked like you had a right to that income. This is for unpaid, undistributed long-term capital gains from like your financial institution. So if you had that, then you paid taxes on that, you are actually allowed a credit in the future year. Basically, you're being repaid because it looked like you owe the tax, and then you didn't really owe the tax on that amount. The net elective payment election amount from IRS Form 3800, the elective payment election amount. That really sounds like it comes from the Department of Redundancy Department, but that's an official IRS term. It's in the instructions, and if you have to complete IRS Form 3800 and you made that election payment, you would put that here. A deferred amount of net 965 tax liability. If that applies to you, then you would enter that amount here. Other refundable credits could include certain tax credits under the tax code. You would use the code section. You would cite that, and then you would enter the dollar amount here. Also, you can also use this to report the amount of U.S. tax that's allocated to the U.S. Virgin Islands, which you would reconcile on IRS Form 8689. Basically, you're paying that tax to the Virgin Islands, so that offsets your tax liability in the United States. So once you total all of these up, $5,000, we're going to add that to the existing $4,000 up here for a total of $9,000. These are all either tax payments or refundable tax credits, and those are going to go on line 31 of your Form 1040 SR, 1040 NR. So once we've gotten all the tax calculation, the total payments, if our tax bill was reduced to zero up here, then all this money comes right back to us. Or you can apply for a refund. You can attach IRS Form 8888 that disperses your tax refund to a couple of different places, up to 4 accounts, or you can buy treasury bonds with part or all of that money. If you only have that money routed to one account, you can put the account information right here. And then if there's any amount of that you want to apply to next year's taxes, you can put that amount here. So that basically covers all of the line items for Schedule 3. Again, I'll put links in the show notes to the resources we've created about forms and schedules here. So resources include articles. If you like our articles, please consider subscribing to our newsletter. If you like our YouTube videos, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. If there's a question or a comment, or if there's something that you'd like to see in an upcoming video, please hit me up in the comments section, and I will do my best to get to that. During tax season, I'm trying to make everything updated for the most commonly used materials based on what my readers and viewers are telling me, but I will do my best to put some of these long tail updates in there as well. So again, hit me up if there's anything I can help you with, and please, I hope you have a good day. Thank you very much.